Hello, and welcome to the CLWA Shoreline CyanoHABs Monitoring Program training. We're going to start off with a few facts about the Canandaigua Lake watershed, which you can see a representation of here on the right. The area of land that drains into the lake, in our case, is about 10 times the size of the lake itself, totaling 109,000 acres. Pretty impressive. All the different land uses in the Canandaigua Lake watershed contribute to the amount of nutrients, sediment, and pollution entering the lake. So there in the bottom left corner, you see some icons there representing the different land uses within our watershed system. We have 45% forest, we have a 26% agriculture, we've got residential and commercial and wetlands. So all of these different land uses ultimately impact water quality. So that's why an organization like the Canandaigua Lake Watershed Association exists. We care about what happens in the watershed and how it ultimately impacts the lake. So here is a slide of our mission, which is really to inspire the entire watershed community to become stewards of Canandaigua Lake. And we really focus on education, scientific research, and advocating for sound public policy. We do this in a variety of different ways. We have a very wonderful board of directors. We've got active committees. We have a wonderful staff. So for the purposes of this upcoming training, we're going to really focus in on one of those active committees, our Citizen Science Committee. Our Citizen Science Committee was established several years ago as a result of a lot of the water quality challenges that we're seeing. We've got a great group of folks and a lot of dedicated volunteers that participate in these different programs that you'll see here on the screen. The top three blue bars there are our ongoing initiatives. As we mentioned, tonight we're going to be talking about the HABS program. So that's something that started in 2018. We'll get into that a little bit later in this presentation. We also participate in the Citizens Statewide Lake Assessment Program. This is a water chemistry sampling program that is initiated by the Department of Environmental Conservation. We've been participating in that for a couple of years now. It's biweekly water chemistry sampling. We also have an active Secchi disc program. This is measuring water clarity and a surface water temperature. We've got 18 volunteers out there that do a Secchi disc reading from their own boat and submit using an easy-to-use online portal. And a subset of those volunteers are also participating in a program which we call the Temperature at Depth Project. So some of our Secchi disc volunteers are actually doing deep water temperatures at 1 meter intervals all the way down to 50 meters. And this is helping us really understand our thermocline and how water temperatures change throughout the water column. So those are ongoing initiatives. And then the bottom three bullets there, you'll see are some of our newer research projects that we're participating in. We're actively partnering with SUNY Environmental Science and Forestry and Dr. Greg Boyer to look at how our algal community changes over time and space on Canandaigua Lake. This is a really neat project. It's kind of one of those things that we haven't really looked at too closely in the past. So we've got six different sites on Canandaigua Lake. You're going to learn more about those team leaders in a few minutes and the work that they're doing to track the changes in our algal community. They're armed with these really neat iolite microscopes which connect with their cell phones. So they're taking pictures and collecting water samples. We also have 2 stream monitoring programs that we've got going on, one in partnership with the Finger Lakes Community College. And that is looking at the water chemistry of 6 sub-watersheds in the northeastern part of Canandaigua Lake that are historically tied to what we call quote unquote HABS hotspots. So an area of the lake that we see a lot of HABS formation. We also have an E. coli fecal contamination stream sampling project. This is after storm events, and this is funded by the Ontario County Water Resource Council. So a lot of really interesting and important work that's being done, and it's all kind of run through our volunteer Citizen Science Committee. So it's a really great instance of how citizens can get engaged in scientific data collection. And here's a map of all of our different water quality monitoring locations throughout the lake. When you put them all on one map, it's quite impressive. The blue dots are our shoreline monitoring zones for the CyanoHABs project. We also have in the purple those ESF algal monitoring sites. There's six of them on the lake, 3 on the east side and 3 on the west side. And each of these sites are monitored by one of our volunteers who's trained to run those IO light microscopes, and they're going to serve as your HABS team leaders this year. Those water chemistry sampling sites, the Citizen Statewide Lake Assessment Program, are indicated in red. We've got 2 of them on Canandaigua Lake, one in the northern lake basin and one in the southern lake basin. And then the black dots are represented on there, and these are our Secchi-Disc water clarity sites as well. So like I said, these are volunteers out there from their boats performing those clarity readings and giving us surface water temperatures. So it's really impressive when you see it all on one map. It just really goes to show how many trained eyes we have looking out for Canandaigua Lake. Okay, so we're going to really hone in on the CyanoHABs monitoring program for this training. And what are the goals of our program? Why are we doing this program? Well, because harmful algal blooms are something that we really need to monitor for and notify the public when they're happening. They can be dangerous to human and pet health. We want to make sure that we are actually out there giving people the best information on water quality that we have at any given moment. So it's really important that we have all these eyes on the lake and we take the information that you are all collecting as part of this important program, and then we turn around and we synthesize it out to the community. And so this is done through our water quality updates that we have going out to the community each Friday. We also notify our municipalities and our water purveyors as well when HABs are occurring on Canandaigua Lake in the event that they need to make some management decisions based on current lake conditions. The program also contributes towards that long-term ongoing research of Canandaigua Lake, as HABs is what we say a relatively new issue for Canandaigua Lake. It's been going on for a couple of years now, but it still feels relatively new for us. We really want to make sure that we're tracking this and we're monitoring it, and we're keeping a long-term record of what's happening here on Canandaigua Lake. We also use the data collected to help us advocate for sound public policy with our local and state officials. And the information collected helps us build a great database so that we can then communicate that we need additional resources coming to Canandaigua Lake. We have water quality concerns, and we have to ensure that eventually that gets its way out to state and local officials and ensures that we get resources to our community that will help us deal with this issue. Okay, so here is an overview of how our program has grown over the years. In 2018 is when we kicked off the program, and this came as a result of 2 very interested residents that were seeing a lot of harmful algal blooms in their area of the watershed, Sally Napolitano and Lynn Klotz. They came to CLWA and they said, hey, this is an ongoing issue. And we found a program that the Seneca Lake Pure Waters Association was doing to monitor for harmful algal blooms. And they said, why don't we do this program? And we thought, that's a great idea. Let's launch it. So in 2018, we started partnering with our friends at Seneca Lake Pure Waters. They let us borrow their program, and it's still the same kind of framework that we're using to date. They've been great partners of this program over the years. So you'll see that in 2018, we started with just 16 volunteers, and they performed 218 weekly surveys. And throughout the last several years, the program has grown. We've gotten more volunteers involved and engaged in monitoring. We've also done more shoreline surveys. We've definitely got more trained eyes out there looking for HABs, reporting them when they see them. But then every year does kind of vary based on wind conditions, weather patterns, drought. Are we experiencing a lot of rain? So some years we have a very what we call HABsy year, and others we do not. And that's really indicated by the number of confirmed blooms that you'll see at the bottom of this chart here. We've got many great partners in this initiative that really help us be able to implement this program. The Finger Lakes Institute at Hobart and William Smith College has been partnering with us since 2018. The water samples that are collected as part of this program are delivered to the Finger Lakes Institute in Geneva, and they perform analysis of each sample. They'll give us our blue-green chlorophyll content. They can also do toxin testing on our samples. So it really helps us build that robust data set that we're looking for to contribute towards that long-term tracking. We also partner with the Canandaigua Lake Watershed Council. That is our intermunicipal organization. Many of you may know Kevin Olvani, our watershed program manager. We work on a day-to-day basis with the council throughout the harmful algal bloom season. We help co-author the water quality updates with the council that go out each and every week. They also do a lot of professional monitoring on the lake. So we've got a lot of volunteers out there, but we've got professionals looking at this as well. Again, Seneca Lake Pure Waters, great partner for the program. We've really appreciated working with them over the last couple of years. The SUNY College of Environmental Science and Forestry, they are the research partners that are helping us work on those 6 different algal monitoring sites on Canandaigua Lake. They are also performing some analysis of our harmful algal bloom samples as well. And then, of course, the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation. The New York State DEC runs a statewide mapping system called HABS, where every report of a harmful algal bloom across the state is actually inputted onto that system. So you guys are going to be performing a shoreline survey and submitting a report to CLWA, and then we're going to take care of getting it on that statewide reporting system so that folks that are traveling to this area visiting can go on and check out what's going on Canandaigua Lake. Okay, so here are our team members that implement this project. On the left, you'll see our CLWA president, Lynn Klotz. She's been, again, a team member for a number of years since the program initiated in 2018. Sally Napolitano is our citizen science chairperson, and she's also the leader of this project. She is also one of the SUNY ESF team leaders as well. She's got a site on the east side of Canandaigua Lake. My name is Lindsay McMillan. I'm the Association Director for CLWA, and I also serve as our Communications Coordinator for this program. We help draft those water quality updates that are going out and help communicate with our partners in the greater community about HABs. We've got 2 new folks joining us this year on our HABs team. Marty Lasher is going to serve as our data coordinator, and Margie OJ is our volunteer coordinator. So we're really excited to have 2 new team members this year and look forward to getting them more involved in the day-to-day for this program. At the bottom, you're going to see our ESF regional team leaders. Each volunteer that participates in this program is going to be assigned to one of these team leaders depending on which quadrant of the lake that you are located on. So if you're in the Northeast, your team member will be Steve Zumbo. If you're in the Central East, you're going to be assigned with Sally Napolitano. If you are in the Southeast section of the lake, Susan Carpenter will be your team leader. If you're in the Southwest, Lynn Thurston will be your team leader. Central West, Elaine Messina, and Northwest, Neil Atkins. We look forward to having you guys all meet this upcoming summer. Okay, so CyanoHABs. So I'm going to start out by saying CyanoHABs is not a new term, but it is relatively new for CLWA using it. You've often heard us just refer to it as HABs. We're making the transition over to CyanoHABs because it's more scientifically appropriate. So CyanoHABs stands for CYANOBACTERIAL harmful algae blooms. So we just wanted to be real upfront and honest about that shift in the terminology. It can be a little confusing if you've never heard it called that before, but we are definitely making a shift into referring to it as CyanoHABs to be more scientifically accurate, which we try to do whenever possible. And why do we care about CyanoHABs? Well, because it threatens not only public health, but our recreational use of the lake and also our local economy. We have definitely a strong tourist destination here. We've got a lot of money in property values. The threat of harmful algal blooms is a very real one for our region. So CyanoHABs, they're not actually algae, but a very primitive cyanobacteria. And we are very concerned about it because in high concentrations, they can form these blooms that release toxins, both liver and neurotoxins. So definitely a concern. We know that can also impact our drinking water, and treating the water, our municipal purveyors treating the water, it can be quite challenging and can be very expensive. So we want to ensure that we're giving the best information out there. And it's definitely a concern because 70,000 people rely on Canandaigua Lake as their source of drinking water. And again, recreational use can be limited during a harmful algal bloom event. So it's definitely something that we want to make sure that we're actively monitoring and communicating with the public about. And this is why it's a risk to pets, it's a risk to people, it's a risk to visitors to the area. Again, we mentioned those health effects. On the bottom right here, you can see that in some instances, people can have a dermal reaction to harmful algal blooms. You can see a skin rash down there of someone that swam through a harmful algal bloom. That's not from Canandaigua Lake, but that's just a picture from another area. But definitely a serious concern, which is why we want to be actively monitoring for these guys. We're going to go through a few different ways that you might see harmful algal blooms on Canandaigua Lake. Hopefully by now you've had the opportunity to watch the New York State DEC harmful algal bloom training that we sent around. This really goes through how to identify harmful algal blooms, but we wanted to show you just a few local examples here. And in the next couple of slides, I tried to pull examples from actually the last year or two. So these are pretty recent. On the left, you see kind of what we refer to sometimes as what we call dots in the water. It kind of looks granular, definitely green. You can see they're like little free floating dots, but these are not aquatic plants, right? So this is actually something that you might notice before those harmful algal bloom cyanobacteria spots start forming into the streaks on the right. So this is really kind of typical what you would see in the real shallows of Canandaigua Lake along the shoreline there as it's setting up for a bloom event. On the right, you'll notice when it starts setting up, you'll get that light surface streaking just across the top. Here you'll see it kind of by a dock area and that shady side of the dock. This is a really good spot to look for harmful algal blooms because, when you have the light kind of dimmed, sometimes you'll just see them pop in that area. Again, here's that surface streaking. This is in a little bit deeper water, but definitely those parallel kind of side-by-side streaks is what you might notice. Here's another way that HABs can look on our lake. So this is what we sometimes refer to as that quote-unquote pea soup-like appearance or spilled paint. So this is when it really is forming in that bloom. It's a thicker consistency. It definitely has, you can't really see down to the bottom where the rocks are underneath. It's really a lot thicker and setting up that way. Definitely that, pea soup color water. This is, typical. Sometimes in the late summer, you might see these blooms setting up this way. This is something you would definitely want to report to us. Again, this is a really good representation of that kind of spilled paint appearance. Surface scums. You'll also see a lot of debris mixed in this particular instance here, some plant fragments and other debris kind of floating in. Again, areas like this, we definitely want to avoid them at all costs. Don't let your dogs go in this area. Don't touch it with exposed skin. Best to just avoid this if you see it. We also see things that sometimes look like a HAB, but they're actually not. These two photos on the left-hand side are actually from a few weeks ago here on Canandaigua Lake. From a faraway distance, it might look like a harmful algal bloom, but when you kind of zoom in and you look closer, specifically in the one on the very far left here, you'll see that this is actually very tiny, free-floating aquatic plants. It's what we call duckweed. They're individual plants. You'll sometimes see this after a rain event where a lot of this stuff is in the West River at the south end of the lake. A nice, big, strong rain event will flush this right out of the West River, and we'll see it kind of making its way up Canandaigua Lake. Water meal is also, gets mixed in with the duckweed. Again, not harmful. It's a little smaller than the duckweed, but when they're mixed in together, it really from a distance can have that kind of spilled paint or surface scum appearance. So, if you have any questions, if you see something like this, it's always good just to ask if you're not sure. So feel free to take photographs, send these in. You can email them to us, text them to us. Like, we're always happy to try to sort through questions about what's a HAB and what's a HAB not. So again, photos are very helpful. Descriptions as well can be helpful to us too, but don't be afraid to reach out if you have any questions. On the far right is what we sometimes see. It's more filamentous. It's called filamentous algae. It looks stringier, sometimes sort of glob-like. So this is not a harmful algal bloom. You can actually tell because if you, what we call an ore test is something you can do. If you take an ore from your boat or rowboat, or in this case, this is a water sampling stick that somebody used to kind of pick up one of these stringy algal masses. If they clump together and they come out on your ore or on a stick or on one of these sampling poles, if they're clumped together and they come right out, chances are it's not a harmful algal bloom. A HAB will tend to like kind of dissipate and move around when you go to pick it up on an ore, but this is definitely more filamentous, stringy in nature. So this is likely Spirogyra cladophora, something that we see that is actually not a HAB. But again, feel free to reach out with any photos that you might have if you need clarification. Okay, so as a volunteer for this program, what will you be doing this summer? Well, we've got 3 different types of participants in the CyanoHABs monitoring program, and I've got them indicated on these 3 different blocks here. The visual monitors on the far left, we're going to start there because everybody's going to do everything that a visual monitor does. If you are a visual monitor, if you're new to the program this year, we're going to likely assign you in that visual monitor role. So at this, we're asking you to provide a weekly visual report of your shoreline conditions at a minimum. So at least once a week, we want you going out there, taking a look at your shoreline, and providing an online report, which we're going to go through in just a moment here, and upload that report using our online Survey 123 reporting tool. Now, we want you to do this whether you see a bloom or whether there's no bloom. And that's actually a really important point I want to make here, is that no bloom reports can be just as valuable to us as a bloom report. So even if you're going out there and not seeing anything, please still do submit a report. You don't necessarily have to have a photo if there's no bloom, but we want to know, did you go out? Did you check? And did you see anything? Again, bloom, no bloom, we want to hear it all. It's very helpful to us. If you are a sample monitor, this is something we would have communicated with you if we want you sampling this year. Sample monitors do everything that a visual monitor does. You're going to go out, provide that weekly visual report of your shoreline conditions, bloom or no bloom. Now, if a sample monitor sees a bloom, what they're going to do is they're going to collect a sample using our provided sampling bottles and the rubber gloves that we provide as well. We also are going to be including labels for your bottle as well. So you're going to do everything a visual monitor does, and then you're going to collect that sample. And when you collect that sample, we're going to ask you to bring it to your regional team leader, and they will ensure that that sample gets to us and that we can take it to the lab for analysis. So your regional team leaders that we went through on that previous slide, they're going to be the ones you're bringing samples to. They're also going to be, you're going to be assigned to one of those regional team leaders. They can be kind of a mentor for you, especially if you're a new volunteer this year. If you have questions, if you need help with the online reporting, your regional team leaders are pretty seasoned and they should be able to answer any questions that you have. And they're also going to be, again, receiving samples from those that are sampling this year, and they're going to be responsible to getting those samples to our office in downtown Canandaigua at 144 Mill Street, and then we will either send it to SUNY ESF or bring it to the Finger Lakes Institute. So a little bit about our program. We're scheduled to start on Friday, July 21st, and the program is going to run through Thursday, October 6th. So that's about an 11-week time frame. We ask you to commit to at least doing a minimum of 1 visual survey per week. Again, we will always take more if you're around, and especially if conditions change, which they often can do, not, day by day, but also hourly by hourly, right? So if you've done a report one week and it was a no bloom report, but maybe later in the week you have a visual indication of a bloom, we definitely would love it if you were able to submit an updated report later in the week. So again, Friday, July 21st, we're going to run through Thursday, October 16th, minimum of once a week. We recognize that you all are all volunteers here, right? So you've got vacations, you've got family in town. If you can't survey your zone 1 week, we're a great group of folks. I'm sure we can find someone to either cover your zone, or maybe have a neighbor to the north or a neighbor to the south. Just be able to keep an eye on it while you're out of town. So just feel free to communicate that with us. If you've got a scheduling conflict and you want someone to cover your zone, I'm sure we can figure out coverage. Okay, so in a few minutes here, I'm going to pull up our Survey 123 reporting app and go through it question by question, so you can have a nice visual representation of what the survey will look like for the first time that you're out there, if you're new to the program this year. So why do we use our own reporting form versus that statewide reporting system? Well, there's actually a couple of reasons. First and foremost, it is really important that the reports coming in through this program, that we get to see those in real time. So using our reporting app means the data that you're going to submit, we're going to get an instant report, an instant email notification that you submitted a report, and we get to see your results in real time. This is something that actually wasn't possible using the CYANOBACTERIal system. They take in some cases, a couple of days to confirm a report. But, we can't wait that long. We've got to take action now. We've got to make sure that we have the information and we can communicate it with the community. So the main thrust for us having our own reporting structure is that we get that information in real time. It also allowed us to customize the type of information we're collecting from you. So you'll see when we go through the form, we're asking things like wind direction, wind speed, current weather conditions. All this information and data that we're collecting is really helpful when assessing overall lake-wide conditions. And that goes a little bit above and beyond just, is there a bloom or is there not a bloom, that CYANOBACTERIal does. So what we do, because we do see value in that CYANOBACTERIal system and we do want the public across the state to have access, we will take your report that you submit to us directly, and then we will enter it on CYANOBACTERIal. So please know, and we're going to ensure right now that all of those reports that you submit are going to be mapped in that statewide system. And we've got two different ways to access this survey. There is a mobile app, which we've provided instructions for. So if you have a smartphone device, it's an easy to use Survey 123 app. With a click of a button, the survey will be pulled up. For the purposes of this training, I'm actually on my laptop computer. So I'm going to show you the interface if you were going to be using it on your desktop or laptop computer using a browser. The survey link is at the bottom here. I'm going to click on it and it's going to open up and ask a few questions to ensure that it either takes you to the mobile app or the browser. So I'm going to click on it now and show you exactly how that works. Okay, when you click on the link, it'll ask you two things. It'll ask, do you want to open it in the Survey 123 field app, or do you want to open in a browser? Now, if I was on my mobile device, I would definitely click use it in the field app because it's a much better user experience. But for this training, I am on my desktop computer, so I'm going to use open in browser here. When you click on that, it takes you right directly to the Canandaigua HABS survey and report. I'm going to scroll down here slightly and we're going to go through it line by line. Please enter your email address. I have already done this survey in advance, so it's going to actually have an auto pop up here. So just to save some time, I'm going to pre-fill my answers in here. I'm going to put my email address in here. Make sure this is correct. If we have any information on your report, we want to make sure that we can contact you about it. So I know it can, sometimes you type in quickly and you can make a mistake. I'm guilty of it, making a mistake, typing in my very long email address, you'll see. But please just double check, make sure that's accurate. Put your full name in, and then the type of report that you're submitting. For this program, you're typically going to always be submitting that shoreline report. But there is a way to submit an offshore report from your boat per se. If you're out there on your boat and you want to submit an offshore report, there is a way to do that. But for the purposes of this program, most of your reports are going to be shoreline reports. It is auto configured with your water body, which is Canandaigua Lake. Every volunteer is assigned a zone number, At your training, you're going to be receiving that zone number. You're also going to be receiving a contact list for all the other volunteers in your region and their zone numbers. This is a drop down. So you would pick up your zone number, and which mine happens to be the first one on here, 3601, which is Kershaw Park. So you're going to select your zone number. You're going to put in the date, which if you click on it, you'll see is a calendar, pretty handy. You can actually backfill and backdate a report. So say you didn't have the opportunity, say you did a shoreline survey yesterday, but didn't have the opportunity to actually get in there and submit your report. You can go back a date and make sure you do that. You can put in the time, which is a nice drop down here. Now, which percentage of your zone did you survey? As an example, I monitor Kershaw Park. It's a very long zone. It's almost about a mile once by the time I walk all the way down and all the way back of my zone. So in some cases, I don't necessarily have time to do my entire zone. I might pop by a couple times a week and maybe only check out half the zone, and I might focus on the areas where I know I've seen HABs before. So this is just a way to break down what percentage of your zone do you think you monitored, less than 25, 25 to 50. Again, this is really just an estimate here. So feel free to just, take a little liberty, just try to do your best guess here. Bloom extent. Now, if you have a no bloom present, you're going to indicate that here, right? No bloom present, which is great, right? We all want to see no blooms out there. You would just say no bloom present, and you would continue on to select the weather, which today is partly cloudy. The weather in the last 24 hours, there was a storm event. I'm going to indicate that here. There's also a spot for other if you wanted to have some type-in comments as well. The wind direction, I'm going to go northeast today. And then any sort of comments. This is special weather or water conditions. If you noticed anything, this might be an area where, as an example, say I noticed a fish kill in my area. I might want to make a comment of that. Right? Okay, this is an area where you can just make some comments, observations, any sort of conditions that are out of the ordinary here. Now, again, if this was a no bloom report, I would scroll down here. When I enabled my zone, it actually puts a little black dot right on the map there. That's my zone number. It's got my latitude and longitude, my GPS coordinates right in there. So if it was a no bloom report at that time, I would just hit this green submit button at the bottom of my screen there, and I would be done. Now, I'm going to scroll back up here and show you what we would do if I actually did notice a bloom. So again, the very top here, it would be all the same thing. I would have my zone number, I'd have my date, my time, the percent of my zone that I surveyed. Now, where things are going to change is this bloom extent. With a no bloom present, it would bring you to the bottom of the screen that we just showed you. Now, say I did notice a bloom. I'm going to select small localized. All the same information here on the weather, wind direction will all be the same. But since I selected that I did have a bloom, another set of questions is going to pop up at the bottom here. And these are just going to ask you a little bit more a little bit more description about how you observed the bloom. If I was a sampler and I took a sample, I would say yes. And it would actually give me my sample number here. This is the number I would put right on my label for that bottle. I would just write it down and put that on the sticky label and place it on my bottle. Now it gets into some more description questions about what the HAB looked like. Was it light algae level? Did you have streaking? Were there heavy dots in the water column? Was the water just a mild green color? Were there higher algae levels? Did you see that really more significant streaking, or was it more opaque in nature? Was it a thicker bloom? And then severely high algae levels. So this is kind of going back to that third slide where I was showing you the HABs ID, that pea soup-like conditions, the thick surface scums, the really heavy streaking, maybe that spilled paint appearance as well. So a couple of different selections you have here. It's, again, based on your best estimate and your experience with the harmful algal blooms you've noticed in your area. Now, we always ask people to take a photo of your bloom. So there is a spot here, if you're on a mobile device, where you can actually just take the photo by clicking this button. But I've stored one on my computer, so I'm going to press here to choose image file. And I'm just going to pick one off my desktop here. This is actually of a fish kill just from this morning, believe it or not. A couple of dead fish were noticed, and a volunteer sent in some photos. So I just selected that because it was at the top of my computer here. There's a spot you have to do a minimum of one photo. You'll see it's got an asterisk, so a minimum of one photo, but there are actually a spot for 2 or 3 photos. So you might want to do a zoomed in photo, maybe one from a little bit scaled back so that you can actually see the extent of the bloom as well. And because I had a photo that I attached here, you'll see it automatically pulls the coordinates from that photo. And this is really helpful for us when we go to map it on that statewide system. We're going to use the coordinates directly from your photo, as long as your location services was enabled on your smartphone device. And again, you'll see here, it pulled those coordinates, but it also put a dot on the map to where this photo was taken. So at this time, I would be done with my bloom report, and I would click this submit button. I'm not going to do that right now because it's going to actually, the system will think I actually had a bloom, and we don't want to notify anybody of that right now. But you would hit the submit button, and then you'd see a green check mark at the end that says, thank you for submitting your survey. And at that point, you would be done. Now, again, if you collected a sample, you'd want to make sure that you get it to your ESF team leader, and they will ensure that we get it to the CLWA office and it makes its way to the lab to get analyzed. Okay, so I want to thank you for getting involved this year. We are so fortunate to have so many great CLWA volunteers. You guys are wonderful. I love learning from you. I love meeting you. I love chatting with you. I love chatting with your neighbors. It's a really great way to have trained eyes and observers out there. But also, you guys serve as kind of our advocates in the community. You can help by informing your neighbors, informing friends about harmful algal blooms, spreading education and spreading awareness. So we appreciate everybody getting involved and participating this summer. Here's a few other bullets and ways you can get involved with CLWA. If you're not already a member, we encourage you to become a member. You can go on our website, stop in our office. Membership starts at $50. We always need resources. We need ways to ensure that our programs can continue, that funding is there to help with things like sample analysis and communication to the public as well. It's all very important, and it's supported by member dollars. So we encourage you to become a member. If you're not already signed up, please get those on our e-news distribution list. You can go on the CLWA website to do that as well. That ensures you're going to get those Friday water quality updates and stay current on lake-wide conditions. You can always volunteer. We're always looking for committee members. We talked a little bit about our citizen science committee today, but we've got so many other great committees. They're always looking for volunteers to get involved in special projects too. And we're always here to answer questions, to help educate community members. So if you've got an opportunity to have us come to a neighborhood meet and greet, a neighborhood meeting, an HOA meeting, we're always willing to do that. So don't be afraid to reach out at any given time. We're happy to chat and share and spread awareness about water quality and what we can all do to be part of the solution. So thank you for your time. If you have any questions at all, please do not hesitate to reach out to us. Follow us on our social media pages. We've got an Instagram, a Facebook, there's a YouTube channel as well. So please stay connected, and we hope to see you all this summer. Thank you.